There's something different about a woman who walks with God. She doesn't fit into every circle, every conversation, or every relationship. She's not meant to. She is chosen, and being chosen comes with a price: loneliness. Maybe you've asked yourself, why me? Why does it seem like I walk this journey alone? Why do I feel set apart even when I'm surrounded by people? But what if I told you that your loneliness is not a punishment, but a divine preparation? What if I told you that God has set you apart because there are places he wants to take you that others cannot go? Think about the great women of faith: Esther, Ruth, Mary. Before their season of favor, there was a season of isolation. Esther had to leave everything behind before she became queen. Ruth had to walk away from everything familiar before stepping into her purpose. Mary had to carry the greatest blessing of all time while being misunderstood and set apart. So if you feel alone, if you feel unseen, I need you to hear this. God sees you. He has not forgotten you. You are in a season of refining, a season where distractions are removed so you can hear him clearly. Because the truth is, when God is about to elevate you, he will separate you. Not everyone can go where you are going. Not everyone can handle the favor on your life. Some friendships will fade. Relationships will end, and the places that once felt comfortable will no longer feel like home. But don't fight it. God is making room for something greater. Your loneliness is not empty. It is full of purpose. It is full of preparation. It is full of God shaping you into the woman he has called you to be. So hold on. Keep walking. Keep trusting. Because when God's chosen woman walks through her season of loneliness with faith, she steps into a destiny far greater than she ever imagined. And when that day comes, you will look back and realize that the loneliness wasn't rejection. It was God's divine protection. It wasn't abandonment. It was alignment. It wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of your calling. So stand tall, chosen woman. You are not alone. You are being positioned for something greater. There are moments in life when it feels like the walls are closing in, like the silence is too loud and the loneliness is unbearable. But what if that solitude isn't meant to break you, but to build you? What if the very thing you're fighting against is the very thing God is using to shape you into the woman he has called you to be? When God chooses a woman for something greater, he doesn't always place her in the middle of the crowd. Instead, he often pulls her away, sets her apart, and leads her into a season of divine isolation. It's not a punishment. It's not because she's unworthy or forgotten. It's because God is doing something deep within her, something that cannot be rushed. Something that cannot be done in the noise of the world. Faith is not just believing when everything makes sense. Faith is trusting when you don't understand, when you don't see the way forward, when all you have is God's promise and the quiet around you. It is in these moments of separation that God strengthens the core of a woman's spirit. He removes distractions, peels away anything that does not belong, and refines her heart so she can carry the weight of her calling. Look at the women God has used throughout history. They didn't walk an easy road. They faced seasons of loneliness, uncertainty, and waiting. But in that waiting, God was working. In that isolation, he was preparing them. Esther was hidden before she was crowned. Ruth walked alone before she found favor. Even Mary carried the greatest gift in history, yet she had to walk a road that many didn't understand. This process is never easy. It's painful to be set apart when all you want is to belong. It's hard to trust a plan you can't see. But God is not just taking things away. He is making space for something greater. He is not leaving you empty. He is filling you with strength, wisdom, and purpose that can only be birthed in isolation. The world may not see what's happening, but heaven does. Every tear, every lonely night, every moment of wondering why, it is all part of the refining. Because before a woman can carry greatness, she must be strong enough to hold it. And that strength is built in the quiet places, in the seasons of separation, in the moments where it's just her and God. When God calls a woman into a greater purpose, he does not rush the process. He prepares her, molds her, and refines her, often through seasons of loneliness. It is in these quiet places, away from the noise of the world, that he begins the deep work of transformation. Many times she does not understand why she is being set apart. She may look around and see others moving forward, building relationships, stepping into opportunities, while she stands still, waiting, longing, and questioning. But what she may not realize is that this season is not about being overlooked. It is about being prepared. God's chosen women do not walk ordinary paths. They are called to impact, to shift atmospheres, to break generational cycles, and to lead in ways that require a different kind of strength. And that strength is not built in comfort. It is forged in isolation, in the unseen battles. In the moments where all she has is God's voice whispering, "Trust me." When the world is stripped away, when the familiar is no longer there, she is left with one thing: God. And in that sacred space, her faith deepens. Her identity is no longer rooted in relationships, achievements, or external validation, but in the unshakable truth of who she is in him. She learns to hear his voice above all others, to move at his pace, and to rely on his provision. This season is painful, but it is necessary. Elevation requires separation. Not everyone can go where she is going. Not everyone can handle the weight of what she is about to step into. So God removes what is not meant to stay, not to hurt her, but to prepare her. He is not keeping her from something. He is leading her to something. And when the time is right, what she once saw as loneliness, she will recognize as divine positioning. Spiritual attacks are real, and they are intensified for the woman who carries God's favor. The enemy does not waste time on those who pose no threat. But a woman who is anointed, a woman who walks in divine purpose, a woman whose presence shifts atmospheres, she is a target. And one of the greatest weapons the enemy uses against her is isolation. Loneliness can feel like abandonment, like a silent battle where no one sees the struggle. But the enemy's goal isn't just to make her feel alone, it's to make her question her worth, to make her doubt God's promises, to make her believe she is forgotten. Because if she believes she is forgotten, she will stop walking in her calling. If she believes she is unworthy, she will shrink back from the purpose God has set before her. But here's the truth. Loneliness is not evidence of God's absence. It is often proof that he is near, working in ways unseen. The enemy isolates, but God separates. And there is a difference. Isolation is meant to break a person down, to leave them empty. But when God separates a woman, it is because he is making her stronger. He is clearing out distractions, removing relationships that cannot sustain her next level, and fine-tuning her spirit to hear his voice more clearly. There is a battle over her destiny. And the enemy knows that if she fully understands who she is, nothing will stop her. So the attacks come, the lonely nights, the moments of deep questioning, the feeling of standing on the outside looking in. But every great woman of faith has faced this. Every woman who carried something powerful had a season where it felt like no one understood, no one stood beside her, and no one saw the weight she was carrying. Yet what the enemy intends for harm, God always turns for good. The loneliness is not permanent. It is a refining fire, a divine process where strength is built, faith is fortified, and clarity is given. Because when this season shifts, and it will shift, she will rise with an authority that can only come from walking through the fire and coming out stronger. And when that moment comes, she will no longer question why she had to be alone for a season. She will know. Some women are called to break cycles of pain, cycles of generational patterns, cycles of limitation. But breaking something that has existed for generations is no small task. It requires a different level of strength, a different level of faith, and a different level of isolation. A woman chosen by God to break chains cannot walk the same path as everyone else. She cannot settle into the same routines, rely on the same comforts, or be surrounded by the same voices. Her calling requires separation because what she carries is different. She may wonder why she doesn't fit in, why certain relationships fall apart, why doors that open for others seem closed for her. It is not rejection, it is redirection. She is not being left out. She is being lifted higher. And that process is painful. The loneliness feels heavy. It feels unfair. But God is not punishing her. When God calls a woman to break chains, he first breaks her away from anything that could hold her back. He takes her through seasons where she has to rely on him alone, because where she is going, human strength will not be enough. She must learn to hear his voice in the quiet, to trust his plan when she cannot see the way, and to keep walking even when it feels like no one is walking with her. There is a reason certain struggles seem to hit her harder. There is a reason she faces opposition that others don't. It is because she is carrying something that others aren't. She is shifting things in the spirit, tearing down strongholds and stepping into new territory. And that kind of assignment does not come without resistance. The loneliness is not permanent, but the strength she gains from it is. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of questioning is building something greater within her. Because when she rises, she will not only walk in freedom, she will lead others into it. She is not just breaking chains for herself, she is breaking them for generations to come. Not everyone can walk the path of a woman who is chosen by God. Not everyone can handle the weight of her calling, the depth of her prayers, or the battles she has to fight. And because of that, she will experience seasons where it feels like she is walking alone. But that loneliness is not without purpose. It is a divine separation, an intentional pulling away, because elevation requires separation. God does not allow just anyone to walk beside a woman he is preparing. There are friendships that won't survive the journey. There are relationships that will fall away, not because she isn't worthy of love or companionship, but because not everyone is meant to go where she is going. Some people were part of her last season but cannot sustain the next. Some connections were built on comfort, not calling. And when God begins to elevate her, he will remove anything that could hinder that process. It is painful when people walk away. It is confusing when familiar places no longer feel like home. It is heartbreaking to feel like she is outgrowing spaces that once felt safe. But growth always comes with a cost. And a woman who is truly walking in God's favor cannot afford to stay where she was just because it's comfortable. She is called to higher things, and higher means leaving some things behind. Even Jesus, in his greatest moments of purpose, found himself alone. In the garden, when he needed his disciples to stay awake with him, they couldn't. On the cross, when he bore the weight of the world, he stood alone. Because there are places in a woman's journey where no one else can go, only her and God. The separation is protection. It is preparation. It is making room for something greater. She may not see it now, but one day she will look back and understand that what she lost was nothing compared to what God was preparing her to receive. She is not being punished. She is being positioned. And when the right people, the right doors, and the right season come, she will know why. God had to take her through this path alone. Waiting is one of the hardest things a chosen woman has to endure. She prays, she prepares, she trusts, but still the answer doesn't come when she expects it. She watches others step into their promises. Relationships flourish around her. Opportunities open for people who didn't even pray for them. And she wonders, God, did you forget about me? But God's chosen and favored women do not move according to human timing. They move according to divine timing. God is never late. He is never in a rush. When he delays something, it is not because he is withholding. It is because he is aligning. Every delay has a purpose. Every closed door is protection. Every silent season is preparation. Because the truth is, a woman who is called to greater cannot afford to receive something too soon. She cannot afford to settle for something that looks good but is not God ordained. Loneliness and waiting is not easy. There are days when it feels unbearable, when the silence feels heavy, when she wonders if she will always be in this place. But God does not waste time. He is not making her wait without reason. He is refining her so that when the promise comes, she will be ready to handle it. He is stretching her faith so that when the door opens, she will know how to walk through it with confidence. Many people rush into things out of fear of being alone. They force relationships. They chase after opportunities. They compromise because they are tired of waiting. But a woman who is chosen cannot move like that. She must wait for what is truly hers. Because when God finally releases what he has been preparing, it won't just be good. It will be beyond anything she could have imagined. The waiting will make sense. The loneliness will be worth it. The tears she cried in private will be answered with a joy that cannot be shaken. Because what God has for her is not just ordinary, it is extraordinary. And that kind of blessing takes time. Some of the strongest, most anointed women in history had to walk through a wilderness before stepping into their promise. The wilderness is a place of testing, a place of refining, a place where everything that is not meant to go forward must fall away. It is lonely. It is uncomfortable. It is filled with moments of doubt, moments of struggle, moments where it feels like God is silent, but it is necessary. God does not take his chosen women straight to the promise. He first takes them through a process. He did it with Joseph when he was betrayed and imprisoned before stepping into his destiny. He did it with Moses when he spent years in the desert before leading a nation. He did it with David when he was anointed but had to endure battles before becoming king. And he does it with his daughters today. A woman in the wilderness is not forgotten. She is being prepared. The loneliness she feels is not to break her, but to build her. It is in this season that God teaches her how to rely on him fully, how to discern his voice clearly, how to walk by faith and not by sight. It is in this season that distractions are removed so that she can grow into the woman she was always meant to be. The wilderness strips away everything that is not aligned with her purpose. Friendships that cannot sustain her next level begin to fade. Relationships that were built on temporary foundations fall apart. Comfort zones are shattered because she cannot carry excess weight into her destiny. The promise requires a version of her that is stronger, wiser, and more in tune with God than ever before. The wilderness is temporary, but the transformation that happens in it is permanent. When the season shifts, when she steps into what God has for her, she will see that the loneliness was never a punishment. It was preparation. She was never abandoned. She was being equipped. Because what she is about to walk into will require every ounce of strength. Every lesson, every moment she spent in the quiet seeking God when no one else was watching. And when she emerges, she will not just be stepping into a new season. She will be stepping into her destiny. A woman who is truly favored by God will experience seasons where he removes every distraction, every unnecessary voice, and every false source of comfort so that she can develop an intimacy with him that is unshakable. It is in these quiet, lonely moments that he speaks the loudest. When the world is stripped away, when no one else is around, she is left with the one who never leaves. Loneliness can feel like a burden, but in God's hands, it becomes a blessing. Because it is in that sacred solitude that she learns who she truly is. She is not defined by relationships, by titles, by approval from others. She is defined by her Creator. The world may overlook her, but heaven knows her name. She may feel unseen by people, but she is fully known by God. And in the quiet, he whispers his plans, his promises, his purpose over her life. Many women try to fill the emptiness with temporary things, busyness, distractions, relationships that are not God ordained. But a woman who is chosen must learn to sit in the silence and allow God to fill her completely, because the love she is searching for, the validation she desires, the fulfillment she craves, it is not found in people, it is found in him. God does not allow his favored daughters to settle for surface level faith. He pulls them deeper. He teaches them how to stand alone, how to trust him when nothing makes sense, how to find peace even in the waiting. Because when a woman reaches a place where her relationship with God is stronger than her need for human validation, she becomes unstoppable. She no longer seeks approval. She walks in divine authority. She no longer fears rejection. She moves with confidence, knowing that if God is for her, nothing can stand against her. This is why loneliness is not meant to break her, but to strengthen her. It is in this season that she discovers that God is not just her provider, he is her closest companion. He is not just her guide, he is her source of love, peace, and identity. And once she experiences that level of closeness with him, she will never again settle for anything less. If you have felt the weight of loneliness, if you have questioned why God has set you apart, know this: you are not forgotten. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. The silence is not empty, it is filled with purpose. The waiting is not wasted, it is refining you. The loneliness is not rejection, it is divine positioning. God does not call ordinary women for extraordinary assignments. He chooses those who can carry the weight, who can withstand the process, who can walk through seasons of isolation and still trust him. And if you are in that season, take heart. This is not the end of your story. It is the foundation of something greater. One day you will look back and understand why you had to walk alone for a time. One day you will see that what felt like loneliness was actually the presence of God drawing you closer. One day you will step into everything he has prepared for you, and you will realize that nothing was taken from you, only what was never meant for you. So stand firm, keep the faith, trust the process, because when God's time arrives, when the waiting turns into fulfillment, when the separation turns into elevation, you will know every lonely night, every tear, every unanswered question was shaping you for a purpose far greater than you could have imagined. You are chosen. You are favored. And your story is not over yet.